The Alpha King found the Beta's daughter in the snow. What he did next shocked the pack. "Let her die," the council had whispered, their voices like dry leaves scraping against stone. "She is weak. She is nothing." But Varian Mistfall, the Alpha King whose soul was rumored to be forged from the very iron of the frozen north, did not listen to whispers. He listened to the wind. And tonight, the wind screamed. "You think me a monster because I rule with a fist of frost," Varian snarled, his voice echoing off the cavernous walls of his mind as he stared into the blinding blizzard. "But you have yet to see what I become when you touch what is mine." He didn't know she was his yet. He only knew that the snow was hiding a secret, and the stain of red on the white powder was the only invitation he needed to unleash hell. The ironwood forest didn't forgive. It was a sentient thing, a tangled expanse of ancient pines and biting frost that served as the border between the realm of the living and the silence of the dead. For Varian Mistfall, it was the only place where the noise stopped. As the Alpha King of the Silverblood Pack, Varian's mind was a constant battlefield of telepathic links, political grievances from the High Council, and the restless aggression of his inner wolf. But out here, amidst the screaming gale of the century's worst blizzard, the world was simple. Survive, or don't. He moved through the drifts in his human form, though the cold bothered him no more than a gentle breeze would a summer fly. At 6'5", with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of a kingdom and eyes the color of a stormy sea, Varian was a predator in every sense. He wore heavy furs lined with obsidian leather, his boots crunching rhythmically against the ice. "Go back," his wolf rumbled, a low, vibratory sound in his chest. "The storm kills tonight." "We are not finished," Varian muttered, scanning the tree line. He was tracking a rogue scent, something foul, something that smelled of sulfur and betrayal. But the trail had gone cold hours ago. He turned to head back toward the capital when the wind shifted. It wasn't the scent of a rogue. It wasn't the musk of a deer or the sharp tang of pine. It was sweet. Painfully, heartbreakingly sweet. Like vanilla orchids crushed under a heavy boot, mixed with the copper tang of fresh blood. Varian froze. His heart, usually a steady, slow drum, skipped a beat. "Mate?" his wolf questioned, the beast suddenly pacing in his mind. "No. Faint. Dying." Varian didn't run. He exploded into motion. He tore through the underbrush, snapping frozen branches like matchsticks. The scent grew stronger, laced with the undeniable stench of impending death. He reached a small clearing, a hollow at the base of a massive gnarled oak tree. The snow here was undisturbed by wind, creating a perfect, silent white blanket. But the center of the blanket was stained crimson. There, half buried, lay a figure. Varian dropped to his knees, the snow soaking instantly into his trousers. He brushed the powder away with hands that were surprisingly gentle, revealing the face of a young woman. Her skin was translucent, blue-veined, and pale as the ice beneath her. Her lashes were frozen together, dark crescents against her cheeks. He recognized her. Not by rank. She was too insignificant for the king to know socially, but by the scent that had haunted the edges of the pack meetings. Willora Mistthorn. She was the daughter of Renford Ashthorn, one of his most sycophantic and slippery betas. She was the girl who stood in the back, head bowed, wearing threadbare grey, while her stepsisters draped themselves in silk. She was the runt the pack whispered about. "Willora," he commanded, his voice a low growl of power that usually forced submission. "Open your eyes." She did not move. Her chest was still. Panic, foreign and sharp, sliced through Varian. He ripped off his glove and pressed his hand to her neck. There. A flutter. A beat so faint it was like the wings of a dying moth. She wasn't just frozen. She was broken. Her grey wool dress was torn at the shoulder, revealing claw marks, not from a wild animal, but from a shifter. 3 distinct lines. A punishment. Who did this? Varian roared into the storm, the sound shaking the snow from the branches above. He realized then why she was here. This wasn't an accident. No one walked 3 miles into the ironwood in a blizzard without a coat. She had been left, discarded, a sacrifice to the winter. Rage, hot and molten, flooded his veins, melting the ice around his heart. He didn't care about the politics. He didn't care that touching a lower-ranking female in such a way was considered improper for a king without his council present. Varian unclasped his heavy fur cloak, the royal mantle, a symbol of his office that no other wolf was permitted to touch, and wrapped it around her small, broken body. The black fur swallowed her frame. He scooped her up into his arms. She weighed nothing. She felt like a bird made of hollow bones and sorrow. As he pulled her against his chest, her head lolled back, resting against his shoulder. Her skin was ice against his neck, but beneath the frost, a spark jumped, a jolt of electricity that traveled from her skin to his, snapping his wolf to attention. "Mine!" the beast snarled, louder this time. "Protect." Varian looked down at the Beta's daughter, the rejected girl left to die in a white grave. His eyes narrowed. "If the cold doesn't take you, Willora," he whispered into her frozen hair, "I promise you, the fire I rain down on those who did this will." He turned back toward the lights of the Pack City, no longer a king on patrol, but a wraith of vengeance carrying a stolen soul. The Great Hall of the Silverblood Pack was a masterpiece of brutalist architecture and opulence. Massive stone pillars rose to a vaulted ceiling painted with the history of the Wolf Wars. A roaring fire, large enough to roast an ox, crackled in the hearth, casting long, dancing shadows across the gathered elite. It was the night of the winter solstice feast. The wine flowed, the music played, and the high-ranking members of the pack, the council, the wealthy merchants, the warriors, were pretending to be civilized. Zavira Highshore stood near the hearth, a glass of vintage red in her hand, tall, statuesque, with hair like spun gold and eyes that missed nothing. She was the Gamma female everyone assumed would eventually warm the king's bed. She checked the time on her diamond-encrusted watch. "He is late," Zaviera murmured to Isolde Whitmore. Isolde, a woman of sharp angles and dark, knowing eyes, merely shuffled her tarot cards. "The king is where he needs to be." The card spoke of a discovery, a fracture in the ice. "You and your riddles," Zaviera scoffed. "He's likely hunting rogues. He prefers the smell of blood to my perfume." "Perhaps tonight he brings both," Isolde said, flipping a card. The tower, destruction, and sudden change. Before Zaviera could reply, the heavy oak doors of the great hall slammed open. The wind from the storm outside rushed in, extinguishing half the candles instantly. The music died. The laughter stopped. Standing in the doorway was Varian Mistfall. He looked like a god of war carved from shadow. Snow clung to his hair and shoulders. His face was a mask of terrifying fury, but it was what he carried that sucked the air out of the room. Wrapped in the king's own cloak, clutched tight to his chest, was a woman. A collective gasp rippled through the hall. "Is that?" someone whispered. "A corpse?" Varian strode into the room, his boots leaving wet, muddy tracks on the pristine marble. He didn't look at the council members. He didn't look at Zaviera. He walked straight toward the massive hearth. "Clear the space!" he bellowed. The command hit them like a physical blow. Wolves scrambled back, overturning chairs and spilling wine. Varian knelt before the fire, placing the bundle gently on the bearskin rug. He peeled back the heavy furs. Willora Mistthorn lay there, pale as death, the claw marks on her shoulder, stark and angry against her skin. "Willora?" The voice came from the back of the crowd. Renford Ashthorne, a balding man with nervous eyes and a penchant for gambling debts, pushed his way forward. Beside him was his second wife, a woman with a sneer permanently etched onto her face. Renford looked at his daughter, then at the king, and the colour drained from his face. "My king. We thought she had run away." Varian stood slowly. He turned to face Renford. The silence in the hall was deafening. "Run away?" Varian asked, his voice deceptively soft. "Without a coat? In a blizzard? 3 miles deep in the ironwood?" Renford swallowed hard. She has been unstable, my king. A difficult child, prone to hysteria." "She smells of fear," Varian said, stepping closer to the trembling Beta. "And she smells of your house." He inhaled deeply, his eyes flashing gold, the sign of the wolf surfacing. "And looking at the wounds on her shoulder, she smells of a struggle." "It was an accident," Renford's wife blurted out, then clamped her hand over her mouth. "An accident," Varian repeated. He looked at the crowd. "Is it the custom of the Silverblood Pack to leave our wounded children to freeze in the dark?" "She is a nobody," Xaviera spoke up, stepping forward, her confidence masking her shock. "My king, surely you should not concern yourself with domestic disputes of the lower caste. Let the healers take her to the infirmary. You are shivering. I need, Varian interrupted, turning his gaze on Xaviera with such coldness she took a step back. "For you to be silent." The shock that went through the pack was palpable. The Alpha never publicly rebuked the Highshore family. Varian turned back to Willora. He knelt again, ignoring the dirt and the blood, and placed his large, warm hand over her heart. He pushed his own Alpha aura into her. A dangerous, exhausting transfer of energy meant to jumpstart a failing heart. "Isolde!" Varian barked. The dark-haired woman was already there, kneeling on the other side. "I am here, sire." "Can you save her?" Isolde's hands hovered over Willora. She looked up, her eyes wide. "Her spirit is tethered by a thread, Varian. She didn't just freeze, she gave up. Her will is broken." "Then fix it," Varian commanded. "I can heal the body," Isolde whispered, leaning in close so only the king could hear. "But you are the only one anchoring her soul. Look." Varian looked down. Where his hand touched Willora's chest, a faint golden glow pulsed. It wasn't just warmth, it was the mate bond. Faint, rejected, dormant, but there. The realization hit Varian like a physical blow. A Beta? His mate? The moon goddess had a twisted sense of humor, but as he looked at her fragile face, he didn't feel disappointment. He felt a possessive hunger that terrified him. He stood up, scooping Willora back into his arms. "Renford Ashthorne," Varian announced, his voice booming to the rafters. "You are under house arrest until I determine if your daughter lives. If she dies, you will follow her." "My king!" Renford shrieked. "She is just a girl." "She is under my personal protection," Varian declared. "She will not go to the infirmary. She will be taken to the royal quarters." The room erupted. The royal quarters were sacred. No unmated female had ever slept there. "Varian, you cannot!" Xaviera cried out, abandoning protocol. "The scandal! The council will never—" Varian stopped. He turned slowly, holding Willora against him like a shield and a weapon. "I am the king," he snarled, his canines lengthening. "I am the council, and anyone who objects to my saving a member of this pack can challenge me right now." Silence. Absolute, terrified silence. Varian turned and walked out of the hall, carrying the Beta's daughter up the grand staircase, leaving a court of shattered expectations and rising panic in his wake. The royal chambers smelled of cedar, old leather, and the unique spicy scent of the Alpha King. It was a masculine, overwhelming sensory experience that was the first thing Willora noticed as she drifted up from the darkness. She didn't open her eyes immediately. Experience had taught her that waking up usually meant chores, cold water, or her stepmother's shrill voice listing her failures. But there was no cold. She was warm. Impossibly, wonderfully warm. She felt soft silk against her skin and a heavy weight, a duvet, tucked around her. Am I dead? She wondered. Is this the moon goddess's hall? Drink. The voice was deep, rough like gravel, but quiet. It didn't sound like her father. Willora's eyes snapped open. She was in a bed the size of her entire bedroom back home. A fire roared in a black marble fireplace, and sitting in a velvet armchair right beside the bed, watching her with intense, unblinking, predatory focus, was the king. Willora gasped and scrambled backward, pressing her spine against the headboard. The movement tore at the wounds on her shoulder, and she cried out, clutching her arm. "Easy," Varian said. He didn't lunge. He leaned forward slowly, holding out a glass of water. "You are safe, Willora." My king?" Her voice was a cracked whisper. Her throat felt full of glass. "Why am I?" "You were in the snow," Varian said. "I found you." The memories crashed into her. The argument, her father's drunken rage, the accusation that she had stolen the family heirloom, a lie planted by her stepsister, the claws, the door slamming, the command, "Don't come back until you freeze the sin out of you." She started to shake, violent, uncontrollable tremors. "I have to go. He said I can't come back." "You aren't going back there," Varian said. His tone brooked no argument. "Here, drink." She took the glass with trembling hands. Her fingers brushed his. A spark, hot and shocking, jumped between them. Willora nearly dropped the glass. She looked up at him, her hazel eyes meeting his storm-grey ones. She saw the pupils of his eyes dilate. She saw the way his nostrils flared, inhaling her scent. "He knows," she thought in panic. "He knows I'm weak. He knows I'm broken." "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you bring me here? The infirmary is cold," Varian finished, "and crowded, and I do not trust the healers to keep your father away." "My father is a respected beta," Willora said automatically, the script she had been taught to say for years. "Your father," Varian growled, standing up and pacing the room, his restless energy filling the space, "is a maggot who threw his child into a blizzard. Do not defend him to me, Willora. It insults my intelligence." Willora shrank back. The anger radiating off him was terrifying. This was the Alpha King, the man rumored to have killed a rogue leader with his bare hands. Varian stopped pacing. He saw her fear. He took a deep breath, visibly reining in his temper. He walked back to the bed and sat on the edge. The mattress dipped under his weight. "Let me see your shoulder," he said softly. "It's fine," she lied, clutching the sheet. "Willora." It wasn't a question. Slowly she lowered the sheet. She was wearing one of his shirts. It swallowed her whole, but the top buttons were undone to reveal the bandages Isolde had applied. Varian reached out. He didn't touch the wound. He traced the skin just above it, his rough, calloused finger sending shivers down her spine. "It will scar," he said, regret in his voice. "I have others," she murmured, then bit her lip, wishing she hadn't said that. Varian went still. "Show me." "No." "Willora." "Please don't," she begged, tears filling her eyes. "Please don't look at me. I'm ugly. I'm scarred, and I'm nothing." Varian moved faster than she could track. In a second, his hands were cupping her face, forcing her to look at him. His thumbs wiped away the tears spilling onto her cheeks. "You are not nothing," he said fiercely. "You are the only thing in this kingdom that has smelled like peace in 10 years. The confession hung in the air, heavy and confusing. "Peace?" she asked. "I am a storm of bad luck." My father says. I don't care what he says. Varian leaned in closer. His face was inches from hers. She could feel the heat radiating from him. It was intoxicating. You survived the cold, Willora. You survived the rejection. That is not weakness. That is iron. He looked at her mouth. For a heartbeat, Willora thought he might kiss her. The thought was insane. A king kissing a disgraced beta? But her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. A knock at the door shattered the moment. Vorian pulled back, his expression hardening instantly into the mask of the king. Enter. The door opened, and Isolde slipped in. She looked tired, her dark hair frazzled. She carried a tray of potions. The fever is breaking, Isolde noted, glancing between the two of them with a sharp, calculating look. But the council is restless, Varian. They are demanding to know why the Alpha is playing nursemaid. Let them demand, Varian said, standing up. Xaviera is rallying the families, Isolde warned. She is spinning a narrative. She says Willora has bewitched you. Sorcery. Sorcery? Willora squeaked. Varian laughed, a dark, humorless sound. Let her spin her webs. I am the spider in this castle, not her. He turned back to Willora. Rest. Isolde will tend to you. No one enters this room but us. If your father tries to approach the door, the guards have orders to remove his head. He walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the brass handle. He looked back at her, his eyes softening just a fraction. You are safe now, Willora. Sleep. He left. Willora slumped back against the pillows, her mind racing. Isolde moved to the bedside, setting down the tray. She began to mix a glowing green liquid. He likes you, Isolde said casually. He pities me, Willora corrected. Isolde stopped stirring. She looked at Willora with ancient, unsettling eyes. Varian Mistfall does not know pity. He knows duty, and he knows war. If he brought you here, it is not because he feels sorry for you. Then why? Isolde smiled, a crooked, mysterious thing. Because the prophecy said the king would find his heart in the ice. We all thought it was a metaphor. She tapped the glass against Willora's lips. Drink. You'll need your strength. The snow has melted, little wolf. But the real storm is just beginning inside these walls. Willora drank the bitter potion. As sleep dragged her under, she could still feel the phantom pressure of the king's hand on her face and the impossible warmth of the name he had given her. 3 days passed in a blur of fever dreams and satin sheets. Willora drifted in and out of consciousness, always tethered to the waking world by the scent of pine and heavy, frozen iron. Varian. When she finally woke with a clear mind, the room was empty. Sunlight streamed through massive floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a space that was larger than her father's entire house. The walls were lined with books, and the furniture was dark, heavy mahogany. It was a masculine room, devoid of softness, except for her. She pushed herself up. Her shoulder ached, but the sharp, agonizing burn was gone. In its place was a dull throb and a strange, humming energy that seemed to vibrate beneath her skin. She slid out of bed. Her legs were shaky, like a newborn fawn's. She walked to the mirror in the corner and gasped. The girl staring back wasn't the grey, ash-covered beta she knew. Her skin, usually sallow from malnutrition, had a faint, rosy glow. Her hair, washed and brushed by unseen hands, cascaded down her back in waves of chestnut silk. She wore a nightgown of white lace that looked worth more than her life. I look like a ghost dressed up for a funeral, she whispered to herself. You look like a queen. Willora spun around. Varian was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed over his massive chest. He wore a crisp black shirt, with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked by faint, silver scars. My king, she breathed, instinctively dropping into a curtsy. Varian was across the room in 2 strides. He caught her elbows, pulling her upright. Do not bow to me, Willora. Not in this room. Not ever again. His hands burned through the thin lace. The intensity in his eyes made her knees weak. I should go, she stammered. My father. Your father is currently trying to gamble his way out of house arrest, Varian said dryly, and you are not going anywhere. Today you eat real food. He led her not to the kitchens, but to a private balcony overlooking the snowy expanse of the Silverblood capital. The table was set with a feast: roasted pheasant, warm bread, fruits she had only ever seen in books. As she ate, ravenous despite her nerves, Varian watched her. He didn't eat. He just drank black coffee and studied her like she was a complex battle map he needed to decipher. Why? She asked, putting down her fork. Why are you doing this? The pack. They will say you are favoring a weakling. Let them talk, Varian said. Wolves love to howl at what they don't understand. He leaned forward. And you are not a weakling. You survived the Ironwood. You survived a house that starved you. Strength isn't just about claws, Willora. It's about endurance. Before she could reply, the balcony doors opened. Zeviera Highshore swept in, followed by 2 of her handmaidens. She looked impeccable in a dress of crimson velvet, her golden hair braided like a crown. Varian, she purred, ignoring Willora entirely. The council is waiting. The border reports from the north are due. They can wait, Varian said, not looking away from Willora. Zeviera's smile tightened. She finally turned her gaze to Willora. Her blue eyes were cold, assessing, and utterly cruel. Oh, she said, feigning surprise. The little patient is awake, and eating at the king's table. How quaint. She walked closer, her perfume, heavy, musky roses, clashing with the crisp winter air. Enjoy the meal, girl. It's likely the last decent thing you'll taste before you go back to the kennels. Willora froze. The old fear, the instinct to shrink and hide, clawed at her throat. Zeviera, Varian warned, a low growl rumbling in his chest. I am only speaking the truth, my king, Zeviera said innocently. Surely you don't intend to keep astray forever. It confuses the pack. It makes you look sentimental. Something inside Willora snapped. Maybe it was the Alpha's blood that had healed her. Or maybe it was just the realization that she had already died once in the snow. So what did she have to lose? She stood up. She was a head shorter than Zeviera, but she didn't flinch. I may be astray, Willora said, her voice shaking but clear. But at least I didn't need to be born with a silver spoon to know that interrupting a king is bad manners. The silence on the balcony was absolute. Zeviera's mouth fell open slightly. Her handmaidens gasped. Varian didn't speak, but slowly a smile spread across his face, a dark, wicked, terrifyingly attractive smile. She has teeth, Varian murmured, looking at Willora with a heat that made her toes curl. Good. Zeviera flushed an ugly mottled red. You will regret this insolence, you little rat. Get out, Varian said. He didn't raise his voice, but the command slammed into them with the force of a physical blow. Before I forget that you are a Gamma's daughter, and remember only that you are annoying me. Zeviera fled, her heels clicking furiously against the stone. Varian turned to Willora. He reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. You have enemies now, he said softly. Zeviera does not forgive humiliation. I have always had enemies, Willora replied, looking up at him. I just never had a shield before. Varian's eyes darkened. I am not just a shield, Willora. I am the sword that will cut them down. Remember that. The castle at night was a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. Willora couldn't sleep. The luxury of the bed felt wrong, and her mind was racing with Xaviera's threats and Varian's promises. She wandered out of her room, down the long corridor that led to the west wing. She found herself at the entrance to the glass garden, a massive conservatory built by Varian's grandfather. Inside, it was a winter wonderland trapped in glass, but unlike the deadly ironwood, this was beautiful. Silver ferns, white roses that bloomed in the frost, and a small, frozen pond in the center. Standing by the pond was Varian. He had stripped off his shirt, despite the freezing temperature of the room. His back was to her, a landscape of muscle and tension. He was breathing hard, bracing himself against a marble pillar. Willora hesitated. She should leave. But she saw the frost spreading from his hands, coating the marble in thick ice. The air around him was crackling with uncontrolled power. Varian? He spun around. His eyes were glowing a brilliant, blinding gold. His canines were fully extended. He looked monstrous, terrifying. "Get back!" he roared. The sound shattered a nearby vase. "Get away from me, Willora." She didn't run. She saw the pain etched into his face, the way his claws were digging into his own palms, drawing blood to ground himself. "You're hurting," she whispered. "I am dangerous," he snarled, backing away. "The ice, it takes over. When the wolf is agitated, the cold, it consumes. I will freeze you, Willora. I will break you." It was the curse. The rumor that the Mistfall line was cursed by a sorceress centuries ago, that their hearts would eventually turn to ice, and they would become statues of their own rage. Willora stepped forward. The cold coming off him was biting, stinging her skin. But she remembered the warmth she had felt in the snow. The spark. "No," she said firmly. "You won't." She walked right up to him. He was trembling, fighting every instinct to grab her, fighting the magic that wanted to lash out. Willora reached out and placed her hands flat against his bare chest, right over his thundering heart. The shock was immediate. Varian gasped, his head falling back. Where she touched him, steam rose. Her skin was a brand of heat against his permafrost. The ice spreading up his neck halted. The gold in his eyes receded, revealing the stormy grey beneath. "How?" he rasped, looking down at her. "The cold. It should burn you." "I'm not afraid of the cold anymore," she said softly. "I died in it. It knows me." Varian's hands came up, hovering over her waist, terrified to touch her. "You are foolish. You are a fragile little bird, walking into a wolf's den." "Maybe I'm tired of flying away," she countered. Varian let out a groan, a sound of pure defeat, and pulled her against him. His skin was freezing, but as he held her, he began to warm. He buried his face in her neck, inhaling deeply, grounding himself in her scent of vanilla and life. "You quiet the noise," he murmured against her skin. "The council, the pack, the curse. When you are near, it all stops. There is only you." He pulled back, his hands cupping her face. He looked at her lips. The air between them was thick, electric. Willora's heart hammered a frantic rhythm. She rose on her tiptoes, her hands sliding up his chest to wrap around his neck. "Kiss me," she pleaded silently. Varian lowered his head. His breath ghosted over her lips. He was so close she could taste the winter on him. Then he stopped. He squeezed his eyes shut and pulled away, putting a foot of distance between them. "I cannot," he said, his voice rough. "If I claim you now, if I mark you, you become a target for everyone. Xaviera, the council, the rogues, they will use you to get to me. I cannot paint a target on your back until I know I can kill everyone who aims at it. Varian, go back to bed, Willora," he commanded, turning his back to her, though his fists were clenched. "Before I lose the last shred of my honor and take you right here on the ice." Willora fled the garden, her lips burning with the phantom memory of a kiss that never happened, her heart aching for the king who was terrified of his own love. The winter solstice banquet was the most important event of the year. It was a display of power, wealth, and pack unity. This year, the tension was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Isolde had spent 3 hours preparing Willora. There was no grey wool tonight. Willora wore a gown of deep, blood-red silk that clung to her curves and pooled on the floor. It was backless, revealing the faint, silvery scars of the claw marks on her shoulder. A deliberate choice by Varian. Let them see what they did, he had said. Chin up, Isolde instructed, fastening a diamond choker around Willora's neck. You are walking into a pit of vipers. Do not look at their fangs. Look at the king. When Willora entered the great hall on Varian's arm, the room went silent. Varian looked magnificent in his formal military dress, medals gleaming on his chest, but his hand was clamped possessively over Willora's, and his eyes dared anyone to speak. They moved through the crowd. Willora felt the stares. Jealousy from the females, confusion from the males, and pure hatred from the Highshore family. Renford Ashthorne was there, lurking near the buffet. He looked haggard. When he saw Willora, he started to approach, a desperate smile on his face. "Daughter," he called out. "My, how well you look." Varian stepped between them, a wall of black wool and muscle. "Back," he said simply. Renford scurried away like a rat. The night progressed. Willora danced with Varian, a waltz that felt more like a battle of restraint. Every touch was fire, every look was a promise. Then the crash came. It happened during the toasts. Xaviera stood up, tapping a spoon against her glass. "A toast," she announced, her voice ringing clear. "To our king, and to his charity." The room tittered nervously. "It is so noble of Varian to rehabilitate the troubled," Xaviera continued, her eyes locking on Willora. "Even those who steal from their own kin." Varian stiffened. "Careful, Xaviera. Oh, but truth is a virtue, isn't it?" Xaviera motioned to the guards. "My father, the Gamma, reported a theft this morning. The Highshore family crest, a brooch of priceless emeralds. We found it 10 minutes ago." She paused for dramatic effect. "Hidden in the mattress of the guest room, Willora's room." A guard stepped forward, holding up a glittering green brooch. The room erupted. "Thief!" someone shouted. "She is a disgrace!" "Beta trash!" Willora stared at the brooch in horror. I didn't. I've never seen that before." "She is a liar and a thief!" Renford Ashthorne suddenly piped up from the back, seeing which way the wind was blowing and deciding to save his own skin. "She has always had sticky fingers. I tried to discipline her, but she is wild." "Arrest her," Xaviera's father, the Gamma, demanded. "Pack law is clear. Theft from a high-ranking family is punishable by exile or branding." 2 guards moved toward Willora. She looked at Varian. His face was unreadable. A mask of stone. He believes them, she thought, despair crashing over her. He thinks I am what they say. The guard reached for her arm. Snap. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the silent hall. The guard screamed and dropped to his knees, clutching a wrist that was bent at an unnatural angle. Varian stood over him, his hand still outstretched. He hadn't just broken the wrist, he had pulverized it. "My king!" the Gamma gasped. "She broke the law." "I am the law," Varian roared. The sound was not human. It was pure alpha. It shook the stained glass in the windows. It blew out the candles. Shadows lengthened, wrapping around Varian like a living cloak. He turned to the Gamma, then to Xaviera. His eyes were no longer grey or gold. They were black, pitch-black voids of ancient, primal rage. "You planted it," Varian said. It wasn't a question. You dared to enter my home, enter the room of my protected, and plant your trinket to frame her. You have no proof, Zeviera shrieked, though her confidence was cracking. I do not need proof, Varian snarled, stepping in front of Willora, blocking her from the entire world. I need only your scent, and you stink of guilt. He looked at the council, scanning the room with a gaze that promised murder. You want to talk about pack law? Varian's voice dropped to a terrifying whisper that carried to every corner of the room. Fine, let us invoke the old laws. Gasps of horror. The old laws were brutal. They were blood rights. Varian reached back and grabbed Willora's hand, pulling her flush against his side. I claim Willora Mistthorn, he announced. Not as a guest. Not as a charity. He ripped the diamond choker from her neck and bit into his own wrist. Blood welled up, dark and rich. He pressed his bleeding wrist to her mouth. Drink, he commanded softly. Willora hesitated, then, entranced by the power rolling off him, she licked the wound. The metallic taste hit her tongue, and the bond exploded. It was no longer a spark. It was a supernova. Varian turned his bleeding wrist to the crowd, showing the mating mark that was beginning to form on Willora's neck in response to his blood. I claim her as mate, Varian thundered. She is queen, and by the old laws, anyone who accuses the queen of a crime without combat dies. He looked at the Gamma. Draw your sword, Lord Highshore, or kneel. The Gamma looked at the demon standing before him. He looked at his daughter, Zeviera, who was pale as a sheet. Slowly, painfully, the Gamma knelt. One by one, the entire hall dropped to their knees. Even Renford, even Xaviera. Varian stood amidst the sea of bowed heads, the Alpha King of Winter, with the Beta girl clutching his hand, her lips stained with his blood. The banquet is over, Varian said. Get out. The silence that followed the banquet was not peaceful. It was the suffocating quiet of a holding breath. The great hall had emptied, leaving only the scent of fear and spilled wine. Varian didn't let go of Willora's hand. He led her out of the hall, not to the guest quarters, but deeper into the castle, past the heavy iron doors guarded by his elite sentinels. They entered the Alpha's private sanctuary, a sprawling suite carved from the mountain stone itself, draped in furs and lit by a fire that never went out. He closed the door and locked it. The click echoed like a gunshot. Varian, Willora whispered, touching the drying blood on her lip. What have you done? Varian turned to her, his eyes still swirling with the remnants of the void. He looked exhausted, the adrenaline of the old laws fading to reveal a man carrying the weight of a mountain. I have done what I should have done the moment I found you in the snow, he rasped. I have made you mine, irrevocably. There is no going back, Willora. The mark on your neck. It is a target, yes, but it is also a crown. Willora went to a mirror. On the curve of her neck, where his blood had touched her skin, a silver crescent moon had appeared, intertwined with a wolf in profile. It pulsed with a faint, rhythmic light, matching the beat of her own heart. They knelt, she said, disbelief coloring her tone. Even Xaviera. Even my father. Fear makes men kneel, Varian said, unbuttoning his military jacket and tossing it onto a chair. But fear does not make them loyal. The Highshores will not accept this. Xaviera's pride is wounded, and a wounded predator is unpredictable. He walked over to her, his expression softening as he traced the line of her jaw. Are you afraid of me? Of what I became in that hall? No, Willora answered honestly. I was afraid for you. You looked lonely. Varian closed his eyes, leaning his forehead against hers. I have been lonely for 100 years, little bird, until you. Their moment of peace was shattered by the howling of sirens, a sound that hadn't been heard in the Silverblood capital for a generation. Varian's head snapped up. The northern gate. A heavy pounding on the door followed. "My king!" It was the captain of the guard. "The perimeter is breached. Lord Highshore and his daughter. They didn't go home. They opened the gates. The rogues are inside the walls." Varian snarled, a vicious, terrifying sound. They would burn their own home just to rule the ashes. He turned to Willora, grabbing her shoulders. "Listen to me. You stay here. This room is the safest place in the kingdom. The stone is warded against magic. Do not open this door for anyone but me." "Varian, no!" Willora grabbed his arm. "You can't go alone. The ice, in the garden, you said it takes over when you fight." "I have no choice," Varian said grimly. He kissed her hard, a desperate, bruising kiss that tasted of goodbyes. "If I fall to the ice, if I don't come back as a man, lock the door and don't let me in." He tore himself away and vanished into the corridor, leaving Willora alone in the heart of the mountain, while the screams of battle began to echo from the floors below. The battle for Silverblood was brutal and chaotic. The Highshores had allied with the Shadow Walkers, a rogue pack known for their savagery. Fire burned in the courtyards, melting the snow into slush and blood. Varian was a storm unleashed. He moved through the invaders like a scythe, his ice magic turning rogues into frozen statues before shattering them. But with every kill, the frost on his skin spread. His heart slowed. The man receded, and the monster of the prophecy, the living winter, began to take hold. Up in the sanctuary, Willora paced. The wards on the stone hummed, vibrating with the violence outside. She felt Varian's rage through the bond. It was cold. So terribly cold. He's losing himself, she realized. He's forgetting why he's fighting. Suddenly, the heavy oak door shuddered. Willora froze. Varian had the key. Another blow. The wood splintered. It wasn't a battering ram. It was magic. Shadow magic. The door exploded inward. Standing in the debris was not a rogue, but Xaviera. Her velvet dress was torn, her golden hair wild. Beside her stood Renford Ashthorne, clutching a serrated dagger, his eyes darting nervously. "Father," Willora breathed. "Don't look at me like that," Renford snapped, sweat beading on his forehead. "I have debts, girl. The Highshores promised to pay them all. I just have to deliver you." "You would sell me?" Willora asked, her voice trembling not with fear, but with a sudden, icy clarity. "After everything? You were always a burden," Renford spat. "Grab her," Xaviera commanded, holding a ball of dark fire in her palm. "If we kill the mate, the king breaks. If he breaks, the council will be forced to put him down, and I will take the throne." Renford lunged. He expected the cowering girl who used to sweep the ashes. He expected the victim. He did not expect the queen. Willora didn't retreat. She grabbed a heavy iron poker from the fireplace and swung it with all the strength she had built surviving the ironwood. The iron struck Renford's wrist. The dagger clattered to the floor. He howled, clutching his arm. "I am not your burden anymore, father," Willora said, her voice dropping an octave. "I am the Alpha's mate." Xaviera screamed in frustration and threw the fireball. Willora dove, the heat singing her hair, and rolled toward the fallen dagger. She snatched it up. Xaviera advanced, eyes glowing. "You think you can fight me? I am a trained warrior." "You are a spoiled child throwing a tantrum," Willora retorted, backing toward the balcony. Just as Xaviera raised her hand for a killing blow, a roar shook the foundations of the castle. A massive white wolf, larger than a horse, made of ice and fury, leaped onto the balcony. Varian. But not Varian. The wolf's eyes were entirely white. No pupils. No soul. He was covered in blood that wasn't his own. He looked at Xaviera, and the air in the room instantly dropped 50 degrees. Xaviera shrieked as the wolf lunged. He didn't bite. He simply swiped. The sheer force threw Xaviera across the room, slamming her into the stone wall where she slumped, unconscious. Renford fell to his knees, sobbing, "My king! Mercy! She made me!" The ice wolf turned to Renford. He opened his jaws, preparing to tear the traitor apart. "Varian, no!" Willora screamed. The wolf froze. He turned his blank white eyes to her. He growled, a sound of tectonic plates grinding together. He didn't recognize her. The curse had won. He crouched, preparing to spring at her. Willora dropped the dagger. She stepped forward, hands open. "It's me, it's Willora." The wolf snarled, snapping his jaws inches from her face. The cold was agonizing. It burned her skin. "I know you're in there," she whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. "You said I quiet the noise. Listen to me." She stepped closer, closing the distance until her chest pressed against his matted, icy fur. She wrapped her arms around his massive neck. "Come back to me," she sobbed. "Please. I love you." She poured everything she had into the bond. Every ounce of gratitude, every spark of desire, every memory of his warmth in the snow. The wolf stiffened. A tremor went through the massive beast. The white in his eyes began to swirl, flecks of grey and gold returning like stars piercing a storm. The ice coating his fur cracked and fell away in shards. With a whimper that sounded heartbreakingly human, the wolf collapsed, shifting, shrinking, until Varian lay on the rug, naked, shivering, and human once more. He looked up at her, his eyes clear. "Willora, I'm here," she wept, covering him with the furs from the bed. "I'm here." The sun that rose the next morning was blindingly bright, reflecting off the fresh snow and the broken remnants of the battle. The coup was over. The rogues had fled the moment their leader fell to Varian's blade in the courtyard. Justice was swift. The Highshore family was stripped of their rank and lands. Xaviera, broken and silent, was exiled to the southern wastes. Renford Ashthorne was brought before the king and queen in the courtyard. He wept, he begged, he appealed to Willora's blood. Varian sat on a makeshift throne, Willora beside him. She wore a simple dress, but the way she held her head made it look like royal raiment. "What is your will, my queen?" Varian asked, deferring publicly to her. Willora looked at the man who had left her to die in the snow. She felt no hate, only a distant, hollow pity. "You wanted me to learn a lesson in the Ironwood, Father," Willora said quietly. "You said the cold purifies." Renford paled. "I will not kill you," Willora decided, "but you are banished from the city. You will live in the cabin at the edge of the Ironwood. You will tend the forest, and every time the wind blows, you will remember what you threw away." Renford was dragged away, his head bowed. When they were finally alone, standing on the high balcony overlooking their healing city, Varian turned to Willora. The fear that had haunted him for years, the fear of his own frozen heart, was gone. "You saved me," he said, awe in his voice. "The prophecy. The king will find his heart in the snow. I thought it meant I would find love, but it meant you. You are the heart. And you are the shield," Willora smiled, stepping into his arms. Varian kissed her then. It wasn't the desperate kiss of the night before, or the restrained almost kiss of the garden. It was slow, deep, and full of promises. It was a kiss of spring coming to a long winter. He pulled back, resting his forehead against hers. "Let them talk, my queen. Let them whisper. We have given them a story that will last 1,000 years. The alpha and the stray," she teased. No, Varian corrected, his golden eyes shining. The ice and the fire that melted it. The pack of Silverblood thrived under the reign of King Varian and Queen Willora. They say the winters became milder after that year, as if the land itself sensed the warmth radiating from the castle. Willora never forgot the cold, but she never feared it again, for she held the only fire that mattered. Their story reminds us that true strength is not found in the power to destroy, but in the courage to endure. It teaches us that even the most frozen hearts can be thawed by a love that is brave enough to stay when the storm hits. If this story warmed your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of romance, magic, and destiny. Let the moon guide your path.